Okay.
Yo, greetings everybody. This is Wesley Pepper. This is the Art Lexcia podcast, and this is episode 125. First, before we get into our guests, just much love to all my returning listeners. Much love. Yeah, man, thanks to all the love and all the listeners. Much appreciated. If you are new to this website, like and smash that like and subscribe button. Yeah, man, let's get into it, man. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today. We have Mustapha Jinadu from North Virginia. You're not in Europe? Yeah, you're back in the States, right?
Oh, now I'm back. Yeah, I'm back finally. I was in Germany, but now I'm in Northern Virginia, not too far away from Biden in DC. In fact, I was in DC. I was there last night, and the joke is that if you go to, somebody made a joke. He said if you go to DC, you might end up getting a bullet in your food at the restaurant. It was a joke because there's so much like gang violence. So the guy said somebody might shoot my steak. I was like, at least it was your steak and not you.
That's crazy. That's actually so let's just jump into it, man. We wanted to talk about Palestine, but like what you referencing there about shooting your food is crazy because I mean you guys have that mass shooting, was it yesterday or the day before?
Oh yeah, and the funny thing is that the day before the shooting, I put something on Facebook which said, "I'll never touch guns because I'm not an animal." And one of my friends, I have a friend from the U.S., good guy, he has an AK-47, and he told me, "Oh, I debated with him. It was a peaceful debate. He was like, guns are not a problem. That people just need to know how to use them, and that other countries are just as violent as America." I told him, no, they're not as violent. The U.S. is ranked number 132 in the world for safety out of 160 countries. So and he said, "What's the metric?" I told him the metric is actual deaths and violent crimes per 100,000 people. And the U.S. is low. Mozambique is higher than the U.S. A lot of African countries are higher. So the U.S. is very low. It's very, very violent. And the funny thing was the next morning, someone shot someone with the same gun that guy, my friend, has, the same type of gun. So it's almost like I joked. I said, maybe I'm a prophet. Maybe I'm linked into the Facebook algorithm or something. You know?
Facebook is always listening. You know that. But like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, tell me, man, like, as you know, do you fear actually being shot as a US citizen? Like you go to the shopping center or you're driving and you have road rage and somebody just pulls out like an automatic rifle and like...
Okay, so I live in Northern Virginia, which is one of the richest parts of America, but it has an economy which is flexible so that if you're a middle income person, you can also be there. So within the little area I live, this is the area close to DC where people work with the military, people work with, they work with the government. Like the house that I stay in are both lawyers who work in the government. So I'm renting, but I feel safe. Nothing will happen. Well, supposedly nothing will happen in this area. If something happens in this area, within 10 seconds, policemen will be here. Because this is actually, DC is actually like Rome. It is the heart of the whole Western Empire. Because it's the heart of the American Empire. So it's going to be very difficult for there to be crime. No, not DC, Northern Virginia, because that's where all the rich people live. They work in DC. In DC, Black people live. I put something on Facebook last night. I was in DC taking pictures, and I refused to bring my iPad because I know that I will be robbed. I can bring it out here in a neighborhood where there's 90% whites, mostly whites and Koreans, or people who are from China who are IT. So this area is relatively safe, but I wouldn't even go to, so there's two problems. I wouldn't go into inner cities. When I'm in inner cities, I'm very careful what I do because you could get robbed, carjacked, or you could get shot when gangs with, usually mostly Black kids are shooting at each other. So that's the one problem. Now, the second problem is there's a rise in neo-Nazi or right-wing shootings in America where people go to grocery stores, but they go to neighborhoods that are Black and they shoot people. Yeah. Then the third issue is, they just go. And then usually after the shooting, the last one where the guy shot people in a grocery store, they went to his Facebook and to his Instagram. He's part of a bigger movement. There's a big movement all over the world, but especially in the US, of right wing, where they feel that Blacks, Asians, and Africans are taking their jobs or which is BS. But what's happening is a lot of people are immigrating all over the world. And so you're now seeing people of color it's beginning to outnumber. So they feel that it's a threat to white supremacy. But what they do is they go to black neighborhoods and they'll go to places like grocery stores, but they won't do it in their neighborhoods. But the third issue is, yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, continue.
No, the third issue is now you're seeing white on white violence, schools, where a guy goes to a school and shoots 60 kids or 80 kids, or there was a shooting in Vegas a couple of years ago in which someone shot 600 people. Yeah. Only 30 died, but he shot 600 people.
I remember that.
That is a sign of the United States economy getting bad, so that the pinch is hitting white people. And a lot of people are under pressure. They're not getting mental health care. And they're living in a country which reinforces male as being dominant and powerful through guns and violence. But the area I live in is not to that level yet, because it's kind of like New York. You don't see this in Manhattan either. Anywhere where it's the financial or military seat of the empire, there's a lot of security. So I have security. But I can see the radius closing in. Even where I live, the radius of where I feel safe is becoming less and less, and it's encroaching. Because there's a place called Tyson's Mall, and Tyson's Mall is in Tysons, Virginia. I mean, people make money here. So, for example, I saw a kid who was 22 years old saying, "I hate my job. They don't pay me enough." 22 years old, making $150,000 a year, and he's not happy with his salary. It's crazy. If you're black in the U.S., if you're black in the U.S. and you make 40,000, you think that you've made it. So, but you've got kids here who make 150,000, 200,000, and they're not satisfied. So that mall is where they go. But in the middle of the day, there was a gang violence in which two factions of gangs were shooting at each other. And I made a joke. I was like, yeah, those drug dealers are shooting at each other because they want, I hate to use the word, they want the white boys' money. You know, they want that rich. So they're fighting over turf because a lot of people in this area have money and use cocaine and things like that. So now gangs are fighting and killing each other for customers there. And they took it to the mall, which is where all the people hang out, and they were fighting each other. Within 20 minutes, all of them had been found because of the surveillance.
Yeah.
Because Tyson's Mall, the surveillance around.
Answer me this, right? Is these mass shootings disproportionately in poorer areas or areas where minority groups exist? So it depends on. Hold on, and that's another question on the shooter. From what I can tell, most of them are white boys. So is it a race thing? Because like you said, like really one of them belong to a. So because to me, yeah.
Okay, so this is the way it looks. I think that the word mass shooting is ambiguous. So to me, what I mean by mass shooting is when someone comes and just shoots 20 or 30 people because they just break, or they're terrorists. But there's another mass shooting. The definition is more than 4 people killed. If you use that definition, there's more black mass shootings, because in gang violence, 6 kids may be killed. Like there'll be a block party and they'll be like, yo, that boy's in that party. So they'll go to the party and they'll shoot indiscriminately because they want to kill their enemy. But they end up shooting maybe 4 or 5. To me, I wouldn't call that mass shooting. I would call it more like, it's a mass shooting technically if you look at numerical, but I consider that to be a casualty of some type of intentional violence where somebody was trying to get someone. But the way I look at mass shooting is in which, so if you use the number of just numbers, then there's more blacks. But if you look at the number of what I would call the type of mass shooting where someone goes to a school and shoots people and has a mental break, it's usually a white male between 20 and 40 years old. And I see that as several things. Within the black community, we have culture and we have boundaries when it comes to violence. Most of our violence now is based on drug warfare between people who are in gangs, and they have rules. So for example, if someone gets shot and they weren't a gang member, they call them a citizen. They say, oh man, he killed a citizen. So the idea is that citizens are supposed to be untouched. If you were shot, it's supposed to be either you were a gang member, because that's part of the game, or you were an informant, or you were a policeman. But within the white community, you're seeing white males do this. And this goes to the culture of America. Americans came here as settlers. And in order to keep this country, they had to have a culture of violence that's acceptable, to kill the Native Americans, to bring blacks over as slaves and kill them. So they have to be violent. And even after they killed off the Indians, they now had to fight the Spanish, because America really is a British settler. It's a British settler country. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So it started off. Then they had to fight the Spanish to get rid of them, fight the Mexicans so they could take California. So every step of the way, the gun and violence is something that's very important for sustaining America. But now that they've conquered, they turn on themselves. Like even in the 1920s, whites used to kill each other like Al Capone. So now they're fighting for territory amongst themselves. Okay, but after a while that faded away because you start using Black people for drug war. So white supremacy is a new movement. I would say it started in the 1950s or so.
Answer me this then. Right.
Yeah.
Like you talk about, I understand sort of the systemic violence and the history of violence.
Yeah.
And I can understand why it's disproportionately a white male and the various demographics. But like that's not unique to the US. I mean, you could say the same about South Africa, you can say the same about Zimbabwe. Why I just fail to understand why is the last resort always violence, and not just like not just beating up, like fucking shooting. Like I mean,
well, think about it. The U.S. bombed Japan and killed probably 1 million. They say it's 200,000 people. They bombed them. And there was nothing to them. I've lived in South Africa. Yeah, there's violence. You could be at a bar and someone can get mad and break a bottle and cut you in the face or get angry. But it doesn't seem like there's planned violence.
Yeah.
And also in South Africa, even though there's racial issues, there is nationalism and there seems to be interwoven layers of communities, Black community, Blacks with people of color and white African. They actually have, you can even, when you look at things like the rugby or you look at me, you can see that there's still a collective in South Africa, even though there's inequality. There's a type of collective. Yeah. Yes. So in other words, when I was in South Africa, I saw more interaction between different races and groups than you see in the US. But the main thing, which you go back to, is that if South Africa had 300 million guns, they would also have the violence that the US has. So the question that you're asking, my answer is that what makes it specific to the US is that the gun lobbyists own the government. And there's two complexes. There's the military complex in which we bomb other countries, kill other people's leaders. Then the second one is in which we make guns and we put no limits on them because the people who make those guns pay off the politicians. Sure. And not only that, they use TV and they use propaganda to actually create violence in America so that there's a demand for weapons. Perfect example. Blacks started killing themselves in America in the 90s after George Bush brought cocaine into America through Nicaragua and Iran, and the CIA put drugs and printed money. Because there was a period in the US in which drug dealers were making $100,000 a week on a low level. So that means there had to be money that was printed. So they printed money, the Federal Reserve printed money, pushed it into the neighborhoods and used Black people as the warriors who fight each other for territory and deliver the drugs for the higher ups, people in the government. I probably shouldn't say that. I may not be here tomorrow. But yeah, people in the government, people that to the point at which Reagan and Bush could have been indicted for bringing cocaine and things in. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Oliver North. He's a senator. He was a commander. He took the fall. He said, I did it. Reagan didn't do it. Nobody did. I did it myself. And he was given a suspended sentence. And as a reward, he ran for senator. So they funded his senator run because he took the fall for Reagan. Because nobody cared. So the point I'm making is that violence is manufactured in America for profit. It's not so much in South Africa. In South Africa, you have problems with drug trade and with human trafficking and everything, but there's not something in which the government is specifically working to create violence to make profit. They do make violence. I see ANC is corrupt, but I just don't think that ANC actually is investing money into creating violence. They might be just taking money and not putting it into service sector.
Interesting point.
I
actually want
to. But I want to add one more thing.
Okay.
One last thing. The reason you're seeing white males do that in America is because America has extended itself so far that the economic situation in America is affecting whites. It's only in big cities like New York and places where you see people who have money. Whites don't have money in America anymore, in the middle part of the country where there's agriculture and things, because the U.S. is a security state and it doesn't spend money on infrastructure. So what happens is now they're under mental pressure because of poverty. And that combined with already a warrior mentality, the white race is a very, very warrior-like. Also the Arabs. But the Arabs, at least, they stick together. The white race is a warrior thing. So now that they're having economic problems, the instinct is that a lot of people are pushed to the limit and they resort to violence to make them feel powerful because they feel powerless because the economy is bad.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It actually makes complete sense.
Yeah.
It's systematic. I actually want to jump into, I actually want to sort of get to South Africa, but we'll do that a bit later. But like you're talking about systemic violence, and we spoke about Palestine, and I don't think there's a bigger, I mean, like, just before we get into there, I just want to give my take real quick, or rather disclaimer. So I'm no political mastermind. I just talk about what I see and what I read and so on. And I just feel I had to sort of make that disclaimer because this topic is so hot, and I've seen so many people jump on it.
Believe you me, I even did research this morning. I even did some research. I did some research this morning too to make sure that I don't say something false.
You understand what I'm saying? So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. I'm no political author. This is just an opinion. This is all our opinions, and this is no. What's that thing? There's a thing I must say.
You're probably right, though.
The art Lexcia is not blah 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 blah. I'll write some disclaimer there. So yeah, that I just wanted to put that out there first. Okay. Yeah. With that said, let's jump into it. I mean, like Hamas has been bombing, has been doing some nasty stuff over the past. And when I say nasty, let me define that. And I mean, rather me be more specific. A lot of violence from Hamas. What I've been watching a bit of CNN over the past, basically since this thing started, and it actually infuriates me how they report on it. There's a real strong biasness there. But so anyway, what's your take? Because I want to say something else.
So I'll start with this. Hamas. It's strange, the history of the West, because Hitler, the Nazis were killing people and doing all kinds of things. The Nazis were created, whether intentionally or not, they were created by the CIA. The U.S. and Britain continued to give money to Germany to help it build its military. A country that they were not supposed to do. They weren't supposed to do that because after World War I, Germany was supposed to be a barren nation that was not allowed to build a military. So they created it. And then all of a sudden, oh, look what Hitler's doing. We have to fight him. Then after they beat the Nazis, they brought in Nazis, to help build America and also to help fight Russia, the Cold War. And even to the point that the whole Ukrainian thing was started by a civil war in Ukraine in which national neo-Nazis who had fought for the Germans or groups that linked to World War II that fought for the Germans caused trouble in Ukraine because they didn't like the Russian-speaking people. And then eventually Putin uses that as an excuse to jump in. So the point I'm making is that, Hamas you can date Hamas's birthplace back to when the US attacked Iraq illegally and bombed and killed millions of Iraqis. And then you have ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Even Al-Qaeda was created indirectly by the US because the US funded, and you're going to see a pattern now. The US was funding Afghanistan to fight Russia. Nazis, Russia. Hamas, so now you have Hamas fighting Israel. And Hamas has its roots in a war that was with Iraq, with the US, which is based off of resources, oil. And I get the feeling that a lot of these things are orchestrated. I don't have proof of that, but I think that this plays right into the hands of America because this is a new conflict in which they can destabilize the Middle East and weapons manufacturers can make money. Because a week after that Biden comes on television and says we need $100 billion
I saw that.
to fight. And look what he says. He says to fight Hamas, but also to fight Russia. And then he says to fight Taiwan. So what they're telling us is that, because of China. So what they're telling us is that they need money to fight our biggest enemies now. Hamas, because Israel is America's number one ally. Because Israel is what keeps America, they need to have it because of oil in the Middle East. So you need $100 billion. So the way I look at it is that Hamas's attack on Israel was fortuitous for American weapons maker. It's not going to be fortuitous for Israel though, because this is just the beginning as far as I'm concerned. The whole Syria and Lebanon and Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran, and eventually Iran, all of these countries are going to attack Israel. I give it about 10 years because because the U.S., the reason I say that is because the U.S. is overstretched. The U.S. cannot fund 4 wars. It's going to collapse internally. They can't fund a war with Ukraine, and then also fund a war with Israel and Hamas, and then fund a war stopping, because if Israel attacks Palestine, it's going to open up the other fronts in Syria and those countries are not going to be able to attack Israel. So the idea is that the U.S. is overstretched and will have a financial collapse. And once that happens, Israel will not have any money because they're totally funded. And think about it, the U.S. is funding the whole Ukrainian government. They're paying for salaries, paying for everything, pensions. They're funding the state of Israel. They're funding too many things. Then they're having internal violence with guns. So the idea is that this attack will make money for weapons manufacturers in the short run, but it's going to lead to serious violence. Yeah, it's not going to lead to the downfall of Israel because that will never happen. But I think, like I told you earlier, what it will lead to is a ceasefire and I think China and Russia will negotiate a ceasefire in which Israel is going to become like South Africa. It's going to become a so-called democratic country, and Palestinians will have rights, but there'll be economic division. That's one option. Or the other option is that we'll just leave it as it is, and it'll just be a 200-year war in which they try to wipe out the Palestinians. They won't be able to do it. Palestine has 2 million people. They can't wipe them off the face of the earth. If they try to do that,
they can try.
So I think what will happen is it'll just be like South Africa. You get your freedom, but the economic situation will never change. You know, that's what I think. But yeah, the idea is Hamas is and also I'm not going to say. See, we have to be careful, but how we say it, because I know you've heard of Nat Turner. So Nat Turner was a Black person who killed white people.
Yeah.
So I see. So if I say that Hamas is wrong, I also have to say Nat Turner was wrong. So I will say that both of them are wrong. Okay. But when I say that they're wrong, I have no emotional response to what they're doing because I'm so angry about it. So the idea is that revenge is wrong, but it's predictable. But it's predictable. So I am not surprised that Hamas is killing Israeli people, because if you follow my post on Facebook, I've been following this for a year. Every month, 200 Palestinian kids are getting killed. And what's happening is that the Israeli settlers are beginning to move into Palestine because it's just like anything else. You want more and more land. So Israel is letting settlers come there because they're poor in Israel. They're letting settlers go to cheaper land in Palestine and letting them kill people, burn people's houses, kill them. It's been going on for a year. And I've been listening, there's a site that listens called on Radio Sputnik. There's a show called The Critical Hour. People should listen to it, The Critical Hour. For a year, there's a guy called Laith Marouf. He's been giving me all kinds of information. Not me personally, but I've been listening to him. And what they will do is settlers will go to your land and say, this land belongs to us now. And you have to leave. And they'll kill you. And the Israel government will not do anything about it. And that is the reason Hamas did the strike back now. And Hamas knew that by doing the strike back, it would lead to this genocidal violence by Israel, which is what they wanted to do. Because now, I've never seen the response to this level in which at least half of the world finds what Israel did abhorrent. So Hamas basically lured Israel into behaving violently so that the world can see exactly what Israel is.
I kind of figured that out as well.
Yeah, and because Israel bombed a hospital and killed 500 people.
Yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
have to
I
say.
kind of figured that narrative.
Yeah.
It comes through. It comes
And
through.
they killed the whole family. They said it was an accident. They bombed a house in which a journalist who worked for Al Jazeera, they killed his whole family. And they said it was an accident. But I don't believe so, because 3 days before that, the Secretary of State of America, Anthony Blinken, said that Al Jazeera needs to tone down their rhetoric. They said Al Jazeera sounds like it's biased. Can you imagine that? And then 3 days later, somebody from Al Jazeera, his whole family was killed. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some heavy shit. I think I've got some opinions, but I don't think I'm gonna put that on a podcast that's gonna be around here for 100 years. It could come bite me in the
Yeah.
backside. But I just sort of
Yeah,
like
we have
closing.
to.
You have to be really careful what you say these days, and you have to be
Yeah.
conscious. So sort of my closing point there is that, like, I think this is a
Yeah.
as a as a South African, as a Pan African, as an artist, and as as an entrepreneur, I do want to put my support behind Palestine. As I said, I won't get into details and so forth, because but I do, because I just believe, as a South African, or as an African person living in the colonial, all these in the courts, in the police and so forth, we can relate to other people's struggle. And but with that said, I actually want to pull in another point you were making earlier on, which I think is quite interesting, and that's quite relevant to South Africa as well. When you were talking about the mass shootings, and how it's sort of born out of the economic, let's say, problem. I read somewhere once upon a time that the '08, the when was it, '08, '07, when the markets crashed, that a lot of, because that was sort of a leveling field globally, to everybody, say that, like, we all fucked. There's no white, black, mixed race, whatever. Like the economy fucked up everybody. So everybody sort of, and certain race groups and certain demographics reacted to it differently. The one thing about Black people is that we are resilient, and as a creative and as an entrepreneur, we sort of, there's actually a fucking industry around Black pain. So I sometimes think that actually is that we manufacture to keep Black people and to glorify making pain. But that's another topic. I just want to bring it back sort of to this global sense. What's your take on that? I mean, like, since '08, since that global crash, the whole world has seen its backside. You can look at the price of fuel. I had to pull it. It's I mean, like, and then there was COVID. So what's your take on that? And also, okay, no, I was gonna talk about artsy stuff, but we kind of
Oh yeah, we can. I can be quick. So we can get to those things. So the idea. So you're asking me what's my take on the Black condition since COVID and everything, and what's going on? Yeah, well, very simple, man. Though we're suffering more now because COVID and the Ukraine war and the chaos is happening in who we are financially dependent on. We're dependent on the dollar. So there's more demand for the dollar. There's more demand for the dollar now because countries need money. Russia needs money. And not Russia. Ukraine needs money. Israel needs money. Americans need money. Everybody. So since we're depending on the dollar, we're going to be the ones that they're going to cut things from. So in other words, price of food is going to go up in South Africa. It's going to go up in Nigeria. More in Nigeria, because at least South Africa has a flexible economy in which they're partly BRICS and they're still partly tied to the IMF system. But the situation in Nigeria is worse. But what you're saying in South Africa is that it's unstable right now. And so now this leads to where China and Russia are the masters. China and Russia are working with South Africa and other African countries to make the shift in the monetary system and everything. And they'll help subsidize food and everything, which is okay. We have to do it in the short run but the sad thing is that we are children who need parents. And now our parents are China and Russia. You get my point? We are not a sovereign. Africa is not sovereign. Because if not for China and Russia, you wouldn't have seen France kicked out of the site.
West Africa. Yeah.
let me get back to the streets. They kicked France's butt. France has
Yeah,
been
they
kicked
kicked them
out.
the fuck out, and then they got kicked in the rugby
Yeah.
as well. So it was
If this
actually
had
quite.
happened, if this had happened in the 90s, or if this had happened when Hillary Clinton was president of America, because I don't think Obama was president. If this had happened when Hillary Clinton was president of America, who killed Gaddafi to end the African Union, if this had happened now, the U.S. would have bombed Niger and Congo, not Niger, Burkina Faso. They would have bombed those people into oblivion. But they can't do it now because they're overstretched. And China and Russia is sending Wagner. Wagner is supposedly an independent organization. So Russia sends troops. They send mercenaries to the Sahel region for security for the African countries, but they can say that that's a private organization, so they're not interfering in African politics. Because Wagner, and you know what's funny? The president of Wagner died in a plane crash. You heard about that, right?
Well.
Let me quick it. So the point I'm making then is that to close it down is that the point I'm making to what you're saying, Africa is a stepchild right now. Our parents are China and Russia and all that BRIC stuff. We don't have any sovereignty. We need an EU, like European Union. We need an African Union. Yeah, and that's it. And I know you hate politicians, but the world will never change. The survival of any society depends on people with power who abuse it. It just depends on how much they abuse the power. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So our leaders will always be corrupt, but they should at least be like the leaders of other countries that care about their citizens. Like Russia cares about its citizens, China cares about its citizens, but our leaders don't care about us.
Nah, they don't. They don't care, and we all know that. And you don't need to be a politician to know that. So I want to get into the artsy stuff. To be more specific, as an artist, with all of this global, there's sort of two things. The first thing is, and this is more specific on social media. So there's this, I would call it this. It's almost this one-dimensional fucking sort of trend of supporting any cause which is I guess the popular cause of the day, and I noticed being filtrated through every genre, through music, through art, everything.
Yeah,
and I've noticed patterns over the years, blah 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 blah, and I just want to get your take on that. So sort of like from your given that you traveled and this and that. Sort of your view on that. So that's the first one, and the second one is that like this is something I'm going to be very personal.
I'm taking notes now.
No, I'm going to be very personal. Yeah, this is something I'm grappling with. I would say, what's the role of the activist? I'm talking our age, or what they call it anyway. Cats in their 40s and upwards. We've got we come from before Windows 95, so we've seen everything from the phone you literally pick up and dial till AI. So I think our age group is quite unique in that regard. I know personally, I've sort of lost faith with politics. Let's just call it there. So as an activist with this thing, because this thing that's happening in Palestine to me is a real fucking issue, and I see, yes, it's isolated in the Middle East, but there's lots of other things happening. I'm talking specifically from South Africa. We have an election coming up next year, and so forth. So in other words, my point is that there's a lot of shit for activists to be, I guess, to fuel your activism. So that's what I said. So the question was sort of twofold. So like the social media trendy shit was like a real shit. It's kind of what I want to get. Yeah, man. But let's just do this. Let me just close this session and we'll start a new session, and we'll just start we'll start afresh from there. Cool.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. Oh man,
everybody, and we are back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Anyway, you were
back. I
saying,
thought we were on when we were talking before, but it's fine.
sorry, I should have declared that. Yeah,
Oh
but
no,
you were
it's
saying,
okay.
uh,
Okay, so yeah, I'll let you say what you have to say. Okay.
yeah. So basically, what I was asking before the break was your opinion, because I get that sort of themes in your work, sort of a call for activism in your, I'm talking specifically with your writing, and like before the break we were talking about sort of all these issues, and these are major fucking issues that has a major impact on everybody, and I think as an artist, and I'm sure you can buy into the what is the mantra of like music is a weapon, what fella
Fella. Yeah.
what fella used to say, and a lot of us adhere to that, many, especially on this platform. So and I picked that up in some of your writing. So when I'm asking you this, I'm sort of asking from that angle. You as a writer, because it's one thing just saying all these things, but isn't there another side to it?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so it depends from artist to artist, but I think that if you are an artist or an activist, you really have to work hard to figure out what is your desired result. What are you hoping to accomplish? Are you hoping to just stand on TV and wear a Palestinian, those things that the Palestinians have? I see
Oh
a lot of
yeah,
people wearing them.
yeah,
I call
man.
those trendy activists. And I was telling my sister, I was like, yeah, somebody's buying no, not my sister, my son. I told him people are buying the Palestine thing to show support. Yeah, but you're buying it from Amazon. So you're making Jeff Bezos rich, So that's it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying, and also I'm no longer going to McDonald's because McDonald's gives free food to the Israeli soldiers. So I like McDonald's. I'll no longer eat it. I work with kids. A kid asked me, "Can we go to McDonald's?" I was like, "Nah, I don't buy McDonald's because they support Palestine." He was like, "Well, we can always go to Wendy's, or Wendy's is like Wimpy's." I was like, "Yeah, we can go to Wimpy's." Even though Wimpy's is capitalism, I don't care but I will not buy McDonald's. But to your point, as an activist, you have to ask yourself, what is your end result? If the end result is to bring liberation to South Africa and to Africa, most likely we're not going to accomplish that yet. So the way I look at it, my end result is to educate people and to make them critical and to make them cynical about the world we live in, because that's the truth. And then once they realize it, they realize there needs to be a change. And I think the most effective way I can be is to work within my community, working with people like you, working with people like my family and friends, in which we have a revolutionary spirit. We're not trying to change America. We're not trying to change South Africa. We're trying to change our lives and the lives of people within our community. So I have several communities. You're part of your community. To me, your family, just as important as my blood family, because we have a vision that we want. But we want the whole world to be peaceful, and we know that can happen. But you can make your mind peaceful. Hopefully, it's very hard to keep a peaceful mind in the world, but you can try. You can try to promote peace and stability. Like, I want to see you do well. I'm see as a person, not that we have any type of a relationship that's instrumental, because we have the same values, and I care about you as a person. I care about myself. I care about people that I know that share the same values as me. And with my art, sometimes I'll troll people. It's just to open people's eyes up to see that we're living in some sort of crazy authoritarian matrix in which we are all being consumed by banks and people. And if I can give you knowledge, I can make you take steps to get your life in order and try to save yourself from what's coming. And hopefully we can do that with as many people. Because I have this idea of, like, you have your podcast, and I know other people. If we have up to 100,000 people who are all aligned and we do things, we're not going to change the world, but we've now created a community in which we can solve problems for ourselves and live a better life. That's all you can. The idea is that you can change some people's life. So hopefully the stuff I put out there, it helps people liberate themselves mentally. And once they liberate themselves mentally, they can be better for their close community, for their families, their friends, and things like that. And then hopefully maybe 50, 60, 100 years down the line, if we keep doing this, the world will always have chaos and stuff, but maybe our communities in Africa and Black people, we might see some improvements. But it has to start now at the ground level and keep on building up. So everything that I do, some of it is trolling, you know, like we talk about the rugby thing, South Africa rugby, and how it's sustained by banking. No problem, because I want South Africa to win on the weekend. I love those guys.
Yeah. I actually wanna talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that just know what you're moving, because I know there are so many artists that I've met from South Africa, and musicians and painters who have absolutely revolutionized my life. Okay. And I know that there are people that I won't say I've revolutionized their life, but I've been able to help their development. So to me, as an activist, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to revolutionize our personal life. We're trying to revolutionize the lives of people we care about, and hope that it can extend and revolutionize as many people as possible. But I think we have to take a practical approach, which is why, like, I know you don't really like politicians, but I look at the world we live in as a negotiation of power, so that, to me, what freedom is by degree. We're never going to live in a society in which we don't have governments. And the reason that's the case is because human beings are predators and power systems. So it seems like we need powerful. Part of the power of having governments and states is that it requires powerful people, and those types of people are usually abusive. So what I want is a balance between the people and the government. The people and the government are actually opponents of each other. But the more that we as a people stick together, the less abuse the government will give us, you know. And I'll always go back, we said it last time, I just don't understand how Cuba came to be. Cuba might be the most perfect society on earth. And I don't know how it happened. I need to do some more research on it, because it seems to me that's the most democratic and most socialistic and most humanistic country in the world. And so to me, Castro and those guys are the ultimate revolutionaries, because they took care of their family. But look, it's a very small country. They took care of their family. Also, I have to give a shout out to Chavez from Venezuela. These are my heroes, because these are people who see their country.
But don't you think Chavez is a bit problematic? I mean, like, he didn't leave a very good legacy. I mean, Venezuela's fucked now. You know, I have a friend in Colombia, and they talk.
But here's the question: why is Venezuela fucked?
Odd-ass stories.
Why are they fucked up? You know why they're fucked? Because Chavez died from cancer, and also they tried, but it didn't work. They tried to overthrow Maduro. To me, Maduro is a mild socialist. He's not the greatest, but he's not bad. They tried to kill him, and they even said that Guaido is the president of Venezuela. But look what happened. The reason Maduro is still in power is because the Venezuelan people did not allow U.S. sanctions. So the reason Venezuela is suffering now is because of U.S. sanctions.
Yeah, absolutely.
The U.S. put some. Yeah. So in other words, what we need to learn from Venezuela is that even when your people die,
part to play. I just look here, man. My point is now. Let me just
nationalized. Yeah.
He did some really fucking cool stuff, you know. Especially that, you know, it blows my mind how cheap fuel was there. You know, like that's almost utopian. Like how can fuel be so cheap? Like he did some very cool stuff, but he also didn't do some cool stuff. One of the things, you can even look at Gaddafi for an example. It's very easy, especially now that the dude is dead, to sort of like hold him as like, you know, he was this.
Oh yeah.
And they do the same shit to Mandela. They did the same shit to everybody.
Oh
so
yeah.
I'm just like,
yo, you're gonna have a bunch of worms.
Yeah, so like these guys. Chavez, I do agree with you. I also, I mean, I was anyway. I like what he did, but
so I'll do the 30 seconds.
I have a friend that part of the world, and it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. Yeah. So I get the same vibes with Chavez and Mandela. Basically, it's like it's easy. Anyway, you get what I'm saying.
But here's what I'm trying to say: you can't compare Chavez to Mandela. What I mean is that Mandela is nowhere near what Chavez is, and here's why I'll say so. Mandela was put in jail.
In what way?
An impact on a region. So Chavez had impact on Central America, in which even now in Colombia, trust me, these are not perfect countries. Colombia has a Black female president who started off as a nanny who had no education. Colombia is now a left country, and Colombia was the country that the U.S. had the strongest hold on because of cocaine and stuff. Yeah. So that you're seeing, they call it a pink movement because it's not totally left. It's sort of like left and still fascist. But within South America, there's unity. Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, all those countries are working together. They're not doing enough. So Mandela was interrupted in his youth. He was put in jail. I don't know how old he was when he was put in jail. Was he in his 30s or something like that? So he wasn't.
Probably, late 30s, thereabout. Because he was 60
so Mandela was an activist. So I'm not dissing Mandela. He was an activist, but if you look at his legacy, he didn't change any outcomes in South Africa at all.
Nah.
Yeah. He didn't. Did he change any outcomes?
Bro, he didn't do his shit.
It's not his fault though. It's just that he didn't. And the thing is that we talk about Hani. Hani had a great spirit. I think Hani is someone that people use as a symbol. He's a more powerful symbol than I don't know the history about it, but I think Hani is a more powerful. So Hani's effect is that he didn't change South Africa, but when there's time for a revolution and things, people will revert to his ideology.
Yeah,
also
ideology.
I don't want to mess up the guy's name. Sobukwe, Sobukwe. These are the guys. Also, guys in other countries like Cabral and Sankara.
Yeah,
these guys, they have ideology. So Mandela doesn't have an ideology. That he doesn't really, but he was an activist. He did some things like violence, which is okay. I'm not promoting violence, but I would call it. He was part of a movement that was pushing for liberation through violence, and you need violence for liberation. But he just didn't have the effect because he didn't have an ideology that we can quote him on now. Whereas Chavez has an ideology and a spirit.
I see your point.
I see your point. And also, Chavez was taken out by cancer. He's taken out by cancer before he was able to mature. But his spirit still lives on. His spirit lives on in South America.
Apparently so. That was an interesting point. An interesting point about Mandela. Interesting. You mentioned earlier on, and I sort of want to wrap up. Because we covered firstly this was really cool. We covered quite a few topics.
What they call the 2-minute drill. In American football, they call that the 2-minute drill. There's only 2 minutes left, or kind of like with rugby. There's only a minute left, and Pollard kicks the point. So we had to get
actually when I end up with that, you had that post earlier in the week, and I sort of make that point on this platform. Yeah, I've noticed because 4 years ago, it was a very similar thing. So rugby has got a stigma of being a white supremacist sport, right? Which to a degree is true, and you can't deny that.
Yeah, that's true.
Being a colored guy, I can tell you now, rugby is massive in virtually every colored neighborhood that I've certainly been to. That's across the country. So there's the point I'm trying to make is that it is not a white elitist thing, and because it is sort of like that, there's people who don't like the sport, period, and that's fine. You don't have to like anything.
That's a personal thing. Yeah,
it's very personal, and that's fine. Like you said, that's fine. Yeah. But what I've noticed is that there's this type of thing, and it's not really related just to the rugby. There's this thing. Last year, let me give you this. With the Football World Cup, there was some on my Facebook feed, there was a meme by some chick that said that she hates, and I'm paraphrasing her, she doesn't like to see men happy. I wish they could cancel the World Cup. And I took offense and I unfriended her, and I blocked blah 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 blah. I was like, fuck you, man. So I get a similar thing about the rugby. So there's this one side, and that is white, and I just think it's bullshit. If there's one thing about South Africa which makes it unique, and you usually raise this point, we did it as a social media about us versus some or the West Africa. We are sort of economically and blah 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 in a different position, and to have this massive stage, it was the third biggest tournament in the world. To have this massive stage, to be right on top and to be potential winners,
and people bring it down.
What it does to the average South African, because you can drive around today and you can see it, a sense of energy. You get a sense of maybe not fake or nationalist, like a good sense of nationalism. Like, fuck,
I think it's healthy.
Once in my life, like, hey, man, we important. And I think that's a good
It's
thing.
Healthy. It's healthy. And to me, I'm going to keep it real with you. Rugby in South Africa is not, it's backed up, but South Africa does well because they have a lot of money at the grassroots levels. But rugby in South Africa it's not, it is one of the most positive cultural things I've seen. And I see how it highlights the best parts of the culture. Guys work hard. They work hard together. They have logistics. They're disciplined. And these are things that I've seen that with the rugby team. And they're out there. Like I follow this stuff because I moved to South Africa. The year I moved to South Africa was when South Africa won the World Cup in, what was it, 2000 and something, early. Their second World Cup. Their second World Cup. And I was like, yeah. And you know, I was like, because I was naive. I was like, I'm going to the rainbow country. They won, you know, and I'm going to. But when I got there, I realized that rainbow country is false and true at the same time. It is a rainbow country because I've lived there. I've lived in Johannesburg and Cape Town, and I've seen fluidity between the different cultural groups. But I still see the inequality. But South Africans are resilient, and also South Africans like fun too much. They like fun too much. So you go to a party, you see white boys, you see black boys, colored boys taking pop, drinking 6 Heinekens. So there's some sort of folk culture in South Africa which goes with everybody. So South Africa is an enigma because, not an enigma, but it's a contradiction. It's a contradiction because
it is a contradiction. I can agree with you there.
People who are family, but it's kind of like me with my family, anybody with your family. Can't stand each other, but we're together and we're not going to let outsiders put us down. So I see that in South Africa, and that's what should be built upon. And the rugby is a good thing. But I just have to say, this guy, like, as an artist, I see patterns and things. So, yeah. So real quick, as an artist, I see patterns and things. And the only thing I keep seeing is this guy, man, Pollard. He's the most clutch athlete I've ever seen in my life. If it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have won the last World Cup. And you have other people that are better, but he's what you call the finisher. And so I've built up a mythological fascination with him. He's a great person. I like him. So I want to see the team win, man. And also, I've also known you guys have some crazy wingers. What's his name? Colby. These guys are bad, man, on the corner. Yeah, because he has so much speed and elusiveness that he can create points out of nothing. So to me, is a myth. But to keep it real quick, so like I wanted France to win the World Cup. I cried when they lost. And I know France is a colonial country. But what I saw positive about it was that they had a bunch of black men who are from West Africa that nobody can touch. And they're the best team in the world. France has the best football. And they come from West Africa. But the point I make is that politically,
I can never support France. I can never support England. I can never support Australia. These are colonial powers, bro. One thing I can't wait for
is that sports. Yeah, sports is irrational. So that's why I say I love, because I'm not going to say the H word because I don't want to get banned, but I really don't feel good about. I really don't feel good about France, but I feel great about Zidane and
Henry. Yeah, Zidane was dope.
So I'm not supporting France. I'm supporting our boys.
Zidane was a serious gangster. He was fucking hardcore.
My favorite player.
He was an African motherfucker. Nah, salute to Zidane. Like, much love to that cat. Like, I love him on the field and as a person as well. Like, what it did to Chirac after that. Was it? When did they play that final? Anyway.
Against France, Italy. Against Italy.
Yeah, man. That was 06.
He headbutted the guy because the guy.
He headbutted, like, and like he told he wasn't, like, when he had to go and apologize to Chirac, and he went there in military garb. He was all hard, and there was he made it a political thing, and like much love to that guy. Like, I personally also now when look at your point about athletes. Now, a dope athlete is a dope ass athlete. Period. But for tomorrow's thing, like, you know, I just hope the dopeness is on this side, because we want to party and we want to celebrate tomorrow.
I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and because I think the European team played defensively. But I think the high-scoring game will favor South Africa because they are flexible. They can play power. They can play power and defense, but they can also open up. So I think they'll win, but you can't predict. So we'll see.
My brother Mustapha Jinadu, like, all the way from Virginia, my king. This was beautiful. We covered so many dope ass things over here. if you got to this podcast, remember to like, subscribe to this channel. My king, much love. You said you got to go work in a little bit, so all the best with that.
Yeah, unfortunately,
we sort of ending our day. There's some drinks over here. I'm gonna dive right into that.
I have my look. I have my.
I saw that.
I hope your sponsors don't. I hope your sponsors don't cut you out for me promoting alcohol.
We'll get new sponsors. I'll actually publish this episode tomorrow morning or this evening because I want to get it out before that. My king, much love for today, and we'll be in touch.
Also, much love to you. Much love to you, and thank you for the opportunity. No, thank you for the opportunity to give me a voice, and also thank you for the opportunity for setting the example that we have to create our own voices and our own media. Thank you so much. Okay.
Dope, my king. I appreciate that, my king. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
My king.
Okay, so what's up? Bye bye. Bye bye.